Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here, recapping games of Tuesday, February the 7th. Blake, I think this is one of the more interesting midweek nights of basketball we've had to cover all year. Let's start in Lexington, where, my goodness, we could do an hour on this game alone. Arkansas looks like it is really starting to turn a corner. It's been playing well for a few weeks. Kentucky had the winning thing going, looked awful last night. You had people leaving Rupp Arena with, I don't know, 5 minutes left. It was maybe a third full. Looking from TV, what a night for both teams for different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know some people had some issues with, where we have Arkansas in the pecking order entering Tuesday's games, but I think you have to remember that all we had to go on was sort of they had beaten Ole Miss, LSU, and South Carolina, the three worst teams in the league, and they had beaten A&M, which we're going to talk about them in a minute. Um, so this was kind of like as we said, I thought this was the reset game where you sort of throw everything out leading up to this game last night, and you see how it unfolds because they had gotten back to 5-5. That was kind of the number we thought they'd get to after that loss at Missouri. And this was the game that kind of could be, as we said, this is kind of where their season starts. And, if this is where your season starts now, it's a pretty good start. So, yeah, I mean, I think I've said this before, and, the Arkansas fans who've kind of been here with us from day one, um, I've always said I think you can kind of point out the wins and such with Arkansas and the Muss era and all this, but I don't know that we talk enough just about his actual ability to get his guys, mentally, from a just game plan approach where they need to be for games like this. And, I think I still think he's one of the best coaches out there just for that reason, because when you see them get in these kind of games, right? I mean, we could certainly go back to the Gonzaga game last year. Games like that where these can be like big turning points, which that was for different reasons because it was in the tournament. But like this is the one again that can now catapult them into okay, now you are an NCAA tournament team. Whereas that they were kind of hovering in that whatever 9 to 11 range somewhere in there. Um, but like now, when you start winning games like this, which is one they needed because really when you go back, I mean, their best win before this probably would have been the what San Diego State game way back
Yeah.
when. Now look, they've
Only
beaten
road win was
Missouri.
South Carolina, where everybody wins until
Yeah,
last
but
night.
I mean, if we're just talking about quality wins, period,
Right.
I think San Diego State is one you look at there. Missouri is a tournament team right now. A&M, I think, is there now in that last four in whatever. Um, so like those are all good wins, but even though Kentucky is probably not projected to make a tournament right now, this is a huge win just because I think again you look at just how they did it, and that is important. We always say that. I think you can never underestimate that how you win games is just as important sometimes as just you winning games. They win by 15 on the road at Kentucky, and so yeah, I mean I can't think of a good enough too many good things to say for Kentucky's side here, but on the Arkansas side, it's hard not to find a lot of things to look at here and say, well, now they won 5 straight games in the league. Um, they are equipped, I think, with a head coach that knows exactly what buttons to push with a shortened rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and here they are again, playing their best basketball late in the season. It's like stop me if you heard that before. Um, that's just what they do under Muss, and again, it's why I don't know that we talk enough about just how good he is in these kind of scenarios and situations, especially once he gets to February and into March. And yeah, I mean he's done a terrific job. So
Well, first of all, for Arkansas fans upset with where we power ranked him, your power ranking is a function of your body of work, and we probably could have put him a spot or two higher, but no higher than that. No, look, I think Arkansas is gonna gonna rise some spots from here. Listen to this, Blake. January to February. This is 3 years in a row where he's done this now. 2 seasons ago, Arkansas loses 5 games in the month of January, including 4 out of 5, starting from game 2 in the SEC through game 6. Missouri, Tennessee, LSU, Alabama, all losses that year. They lose 2 the rest of the season, including 1 to Baylor in the Elite Eight. Last year, they lose a couple in December. They lose the first 3 to start SEC play, and then what do? They don't lose but 4 games the rest of the way. February 12th against Alabama, March 1st against Tennessee, SEC tournament against A&M, and again in the Elite Eight against Duke. This year, 4 losses in their first 5 SEC games. They have now won 5 of 6. The only loss in that being Baylor. And again, the schedule has let up, and that's had something to do with it. But I always say I start really paying attention to teams, and I feel like I know what I'm getting around the middle of February, and that's kind of where we're getting with Arkansas. Unpacking last night, I thought, and a lot of this had to do with Arkansas forcing open court turnovers. Their looks were phenomenal. Kentucky couldn't guard the ball. Arkansas got a bunch of easy fast break points off turnover. They put up the points in the paint stat at one point last night. And yeah, a lot of that was in the half court, but a lot of that was just easy layups and dunks. And again, Arkansas had a lot to do with that. We'll unpack the Kentucky side of that later, but I just thought just about everybody on their roster played really well last night. Davis got talked about a lot. Black was terrific. The Mitchells completely shut down Sheboy. I think you could talk about superlatives from Arkansas last night for a while here.
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody played well, but it's still, I mean, it's still 6 guys basically. And that's what we said. That's kind of where they are now. They're going to play their 6, and yes, you'll have a Pinion will come in and play a couple minutes here or there. As we said, well, yeah, but I mean,
Graham's a bit player for them.
It's very sporadic. I don't think it's a consistent thing.
Right.
And like I said, he can pop up and score 16 against South Carolina, or he can, only play 7 minutes against Kentucky. So, like, those are just the kind of things that are going to happen. But we brought that up weeks ago, that their rotation outside of their big couple, 3 or 4, whatever, is going to change a little bit minutes-wise every single game, because it's going to be based on the necessity of what you need in that one game. And look, if they get Nick Smith back, that adds another one, right? Like, then you're really changing your rotations, but you're adding, a dynamic player into the mix to where now you have a little more flexibility of what you can do. So, that's obviously something else that you have to have in the back of your mind here as we move forward with this Arkansas team. So, I mean, I think to tie in Arkansas' success, you have to tie in Kentucky. I don't think one was without the other. And so,
hold the thought on Kentucky for just a minute.
Well, I'm not going to go into Kentucky. I just want to explain something on the situation here with Arkansas only shooting 9 threes. And the point is, that was going to be the game plan for Kentucky, was if you're going to beat Arkansas, you have to force them to not get easy shots and to not, allow them the opportunity to basically shoot layups on fast breaks or dunks. And Kentucky did not do that. And I think that's where Arkansas completely took advantage of it, in that, look, I mean, they understood that, and I think it's like Arkansas should always do this. And they've done a pretty good job of this, understanding, look, that's a limitation. And we've talked about it before, is not settling for a lot of jump shots. But I think, again, how they played, they were in attack mode. And that's why I think, again, you have to tie the two together, because there's no way not to. Still got to the free throw line, made sure that they took advantage of the opportunities that their defense gave them. And what does that turn into? That turns into them not having to rely on the outside shot, and doing the things they do best, forcing turnovers, getting easy baskets off of those turnovers, getting to the free throw line. All of those things are what's going to help Arkansas continue to do what they're doing. And to be able to kind of remove the element of having to be forced to take a lot of outside shots or settling for outside shots, I thought that was another thing that stood out here, in that they didn't do that. and that was exactly what they had to do if they were going to win this game the way they did.
Yeah, the reason I was stopping you for a second there, I didn't want to forget because you had brought something up that I meant to mention and was about to forget to mention. There seemed to be a lot of confidence on the broadcast last night that Nick Smith is going to be back soon. That's going to change the dynamic of that lineup a lot, if true. You touched on that a minute ago. The other thing, Anthony Black has had a little bit of a knee issue, I think. Looked like it was bothering him a little bit last night. So I'm very interested to see those two potential developments and how that affects what Arkansas does or doesn't do.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea on the injury front because I don't know what that will be moving forward, I guess. But I mean, the Nick Smith thing, as we said, I've always mentioned, hey, once I see him out there, great. Like that's what I'd like to see. But yeah, sure, there's more positive momentum around that happening now. And I mean, what are we going to say? No, we don't want to see that. Of course we do. Everyone should,
Yeah.
minus the teams that Arkansas has to play. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely. I've said when we did our midseason awards, biggest disappointment for me, not in a way to blame anyone, but the biggest disappointment is that we haven't got to see Nick Smith for an entire season. And that's I hope he does. I hope he's back tomorrow. Like, I mean, it's just you say that every day because I think that you just want to see him play. And again, if you're an Arkansas fan, that gives them a dynamic that they still don't have, and that's not taking anything away from any other guys who've fueled this streak here. The Must Bus gassed up, but you add Nick Smith to the mix. You're bringing in the corn nuts, the zero bars. Like you're at Costco shopping for those things instead of just buying them one at a time, right? Like you got a whole bag of them there when you bring this guy back. Now the original Arkansas fans who joined us from the start will know
They'll
what we
get
just
that.
meant by that. But yeah, I mean I mean once they get him back, it's a completely different dynamic. And as we said, it gives you a lot more flexibility with your rotations and all of that, and it just gives you another guy where it's a game changer. There's no other way to put it. So it's a game changer for a team that's playing as well as they played all season. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a total game changer if they get him back.
Okay, I think we thought before the season Arkansas could be as good as Tennessee and Alabama with the full roster. That included Trayvon Brazile, who obviously they're not going to have. But let's just say you throw Smith back in there at something resembling full health. Can this team be on that Tennessee? I think it can be on a Tennessee level. Alabama, though, is Arkansas as good as that Alabama team if it gets him back and firing on all cylinders?
I know.
I mean, I know
that's
hard. That's almost impossible to answer. But
well, here's the thing. I mean, I think there comes a time where, and look, maybe Alabama loses tonight to Florida, and all this is a moot point. But I think we have to also understand that what Alabama's doing right now is not. It's not normal. Like,
yeah,
they're the way they're winning is not normal for most teams. And I mean, it's just they've won 10 SEC games, 9 of them been by double digits. I think, I think it's worth just not putting Alabama in that question because I think it's a little unfair based on where the two teams are at and where they have been. Now, again, you can ask, and look, this is going to turn into the, the arguments both ways. Well, who's been the last team standing in the NCAA tournament the last 2 years? Well, it's been Arkansas. But just as a general question, I think you have to separate it because they're two entirely different situations. But I mean, look, can Arkansas get to the Elite Eight again? With Nick Smith, yes. I mean, I don't think that's hard to question to answer. Obviously it all comes down to matchups and brackets and all this other stuff, but sure they can because they have one of the best players in the league and one of the more dynamic players probably in the country. If he comes back full strength, full health, surely, I mean, absolutely they can get there. Because look at what everyone else is doing now, and that's what's important here. It's not just if Nick Smith comes back, it's Look at what all these other guys have been able to do, and look at all the experience these guys have gained, even without him on the floor.
Yeah.
Once you get him back in the mix, it's invaluable to think about. Maybe guys aren't having to play 38, 39 minutes, but they can. You know, Davis can play 39 minutes. Black can play 38 minutes. Council can play 35 plus, right? So I think that's it. I mean, Arkansas' ceiling just continues to go higher and higher. Even right now, it does. But if they get him back, I mean, yeah. I mean, comparing him to Alabama, I'm not ready to do that just yet. But again, I think it's a different question of the comparison versus who can go the furthest in the tournament, because to me, that always comes down to brackets
Yeah.
and where you're slotted and all those things. But, could Arkansas beat Alabama on February 25th with Nick Smith? Sure, they could.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of, I think it's still a wait and see, just to officially when he is back. I think that's the question.
Well, I don't like framing things as tournament, because tournament's a crapshoot. I mean, was George Mason or
Yeah.
VCU Final Four teams? I mean, in the literal sense, they were. In the sense of if you do it again, they weren't. I think Arkansas with Smith is somewhere in the top 10 nationally. Is that fair? Now, whether that's
the way they're playing now,
nine or 3, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the way they're playing now, they're in that range,
Right.
and I think I always say that too, right? Like we can say that, but you also have to consider that they were 1-5 in the league. I mean, they've lost games, and so like we can't just ignore that just because this guy's coming back. But it is a different dynamic, and so I mean, look, go back to Maui. Search for our video we did after the Creighton game.
Oh, they look so good in Maui.
Well, I mean, I said I think they're good enough to win the national championship. Like, and I wasn't being. I mean, anyone who watched the action in Maui should have been able to tell you that sort of the same thing, that Arkansas is good enough to win the whole thing. Now, again, that's with Brazil. That's with the thought that you're getting Nick Smith, debuting soon enough. That was the thought then on November the 22nd or whatever it was. But things have changed since then. But still, yeah, I mean, their upside it's very high now, and it just continues to get higher, especially if Smith comes back. So
now to Kentucky. Boy, there's a lot to unpack here.
have we really been going 17 minutes so far? My goodness.
We could talk. I think we could talk an hour on Kentucky.
Well, we're not going to do
we
that.
could probably
Let's
talk
speed
an
this
hour
up.
on Arkansas too, but I'm not a hit the panic button after a game guy normally. But I don't know that that's inappropriate. And I know Kentucky's won a bunch in a row, but I watched that second half of that Florida game where Castleton just dominated Sheboy. Sheboy was a complete non-factor last night. There's talk of him being benched. Rupp was empty at the end of that game, almost. You had some very interesting body language going on the bench. I think missing Wheeler last night really hurt them. As strange as that might sound.
Isn't that ironic?
It really. I look at this. I think this team's got problems. That might be a horrible take. Maybe somebody clips this soundbite and throws it back in my face later. That's fine. We call it where we see it, where we are. Look again. I'm the guy last year that heading into the NCAA tournament kind of blew off Kentucky's exit in the SEC tournament. Said I think this is a national championship team. Sometimes takes don't age well, but I watched the way their last 6 halves of basketball have gone down, and I'm concerned for Kentucky. Is that too harsh?
Why? Again, this was
because I don't like to react on short sample sizes, but it was how it all went down. Okay, here's another thing. Okay, adjusted defensive efficiency for Kentucky this morning in Ken Palm 89. They couldn't guard the ball last night. I mean, if you are having talk of the National Player of the Year, getting benched, and he's been a complete non-factor the last 2 games. You just, I mean, that alone begs a lot of questions.
Well, I mean, it's. I thought the Florida game was important for Kentucky in that they found a way to win that one despite not playing their best game. Um, so you just felt like all the mojo was kind of in their favor. And again, you can say what you want, but they had won 6 SEC games in a row, and one of those was a road win against Tennessee. One of them was a home win against Texas A&M. Which compare Arkansas did that too. One of them was a home win against a Florida team that's greatly improved and is right there in the NCAA tournament mix. And so I think there was a lot of reasons to believe that coming into this game, Kentucky's up and maybe they just find a way again to pull this out. But yes, the way the game played out, there is absolutely cause for concern because if they lose a 2-point game to Arkansas, completely different than how they lost this game. It's well, I just said it on the flip side. How Arkansas won is significant. How Kentucky lost is significant because it they still have one quad one win, right? And that's still the issue with Kentucky right now is the big games. And we said after they won that Tennessee game, all right, maybe they've proven they can win the big games. I thought the Texas A&M game was a big game too. They won that one. Florida game was a big game. They won that one. But these are the kind of games right here. It's not that they lost, it's how they lost. And still you're talking about a team that in the big games it's hit or miss. And, they hit at Tennessee. They missed against Kansas, Arkansas now. Yeah, it's just this is one that you look at how they played and sure there's cause for concern because at some point, you are 24 games into the season and you are 16-8 and 7-4 in the league as a preseason top 5 team. And so, and it's the Sheepway concerns now about, well, if this is the case now with your best player, you're picked to be the national player of the year 2 years running, you got issues. And, I don't know what they don't see in Davian Collins that I see, but maybe that's why I'm doing this show and, not making millions of dollars. By the way, we don't make millions of dollars doing the show, but I don't know what they don't see in him, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know why he doesn't play more. I feel like that's something we talked about before the season, and we just haven't really gotten to it because, well, haven't really, he hasn't played a ton, right? So, I know that was something that was talked about quite a bit because I don't know. Defensively, their awareness on defense is not good. And
No.
there's one person in particular that I don't think is, and
They,
we've said
they
this
don't have a
before.
rim protector,
Well, and I mean,
and they don't guard the ball well.
their defense is not good. And I think that is something we've kind of used as a theme a lot this season. It's gotten better until this. Like until this, it had gotten better a little bit. And I think that's something we talked about when they were losing the games. It wasn't just that their offense wasn't changing and they weren't doing anything to fix that. It's that their defense has also slipped. And usually in the past, if they've had some offensive teams that have struggled, they've made up for it on the defensive end, whether it's blocking shots or although I mean they don't consistently play good defense. And in a game like this, where again you have an Arkansas team that comes in attack mode, doesn't settle, forces, let's be honest too, Arkansas used their defense to create some easier offense.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, there are issues on the defensive end for Kentucky, and they were in this game, and they were very glaring. And yeah, I don't know. It's like I said, I look at this team right now, and I think Collins should play more. Um, again, I assume they have the reasons why that isn't the case, but um, I think he would help them in that area a little bit. Just as a guy with size, can do some things offensively too. I mean, he had a great half, didn't he? I mean, you watched the first half, like he was. I just thought he did really good. And when you
Yeah,
have
he has as many
Sheboy,
points as Sheboy did last night.
well, I was gonna say when he has a game like that, and you have that option, um, again, it's another thing that you kind of. I mean, I'm looking at the response here, right? I mean, Cal was asked if he was. Here it is from. If he was surprised that Collins didn't play more. I don't know. Next
What?
question. If
Are you
someone asked
surprised? You're the
Cal, hold
coach.
on. Someone asked Cal if he was surprised that Collins did not play more. Cal, I guess, response was, "I don't know." Next question. So,
That's a poorly phrased. Like is he not in control of his
well,
rotations?
no. Here's the piggyback on that was he said, um, "We're trying to get Oscar going." That was the piggyback off of that.
Okay.
So, but we could go so many different directions. I don't know what else to say other than that it was a very disappointing performance for Kentucky. As of right now, they're not in the NCAA tournament. If they are, they're playing North Carolina in the first 4 game, which, boy, there's something that really
Wow.
makes you
Can you
feel like you're in
imagine
an
that?
alternate universe. So,
Okay. Two questions for you. You know what? I'm gonna save one of these for bracketology, presuming we do that on Friday. It's probably more appropriately asked there. But here's a big one, and I want people to drop their responses in their comments and let us know if you're a Kentucky fan or not when you do. You know about that epic recruiting class Kentucky's got coming in next year. You know John Calipari's history. He's done some great things at Kentucky, won a national title, got into Final Fours, won conference titles, all those things. With all we know, past and present, and I know that this is dictated by the contract, right? They owe him so much money. I don't know if they can move on or how they would do that. But let's say the contract is no factor. You're Kentucky and you can make a move to go get somebody else for next year. The consequence of that might mean that you lose all those guys in your class. Or the consequence could mean that, hey, we're Kentucky and the next guy is capable of recruiting those guys back to Kentucky based on the fact that it's Kentucky. So if you can make a move, if money were no object, sitting here on the morning of Wednesday, February the 8th, do you move on or do you ride it out for one more year given what's coming and take your chances that way?
quickly, I just want to. We didn't say this, but I thought Chris Livingston looked really good. I thought he had a pretty good game. Um, whew, the reason I can't answer the question in that I would make a move is that I don't know who you're getting. Like if I knew who I was getting, then okay, then I could easily say, sure, let's make that move. Let's go get this guy. But I can't tell you who that guy is going to be. So
Yeah.
how can I possibly answer that question without knowing who the replacement's going to be? And I think that's my issue right now. Is and for Kentucky fans, this is look, we're not in that seat. Like we're doing this from a general SEC league wide stance. We're not in the shoes of that they are in that, you know, their expectation is to again be in the Final Four or win a national championship every season, and they've earned that right to try to achieve that because of the tradition and the history of the program. Um, but if I'm looking at it from my standpoint, I cannot possibly say just off the chain reaction to immediately say yes, they've got to fire him. Because how can I possibly say that without knowing what comes after him? And I think that's where I would want to know a clearly defined group of candidates. Is that is that Jay Wright? Is that, you know, guys like that? Then okay, let's have the
Yeah.
conversation. But If you're just telling me we've got to make a move to make a move, then I would say no, because you're not going to get that class with anybody else. Now, on the flip side, people will say, well, maybe not, but maybe there are other people who could do better with a class that's not of that magnitude. And, you know, so I don't think I can. I'm not, it's not a cop out. I just don't think I can answer that question without saying, if you're telling me I have to say yes or no down the line, I can't possibly say yes without knowing who I'm choosing from to replace him. So
Yeah.
I'm not just making a move to make a move because I'm not happy with where the program is. You have to make a move with a clear understanding. And this, look, if Kentucky ever did this, right? Or if Cal just went somewhere else on his own, Kentucky would know before they made a move like that, or Cal would know before he made a move like that. He knows where he's going, right? If he's going to make a move, if he's leaving, he knows where he's going. If Kentucky is going to make a move, they know where they're going next. Because if not, it's a terrible decision to do that. So, yeah, I don't, and you may have a different answer, but I think that's where I'm at on it. So,
No, I asked you that knowing it was a difficult question. My general philosophy is that I think when I know it's time to make a move and move on, to me, that is the preferable move. But this one's complicated, and I think you brought up a really good point. And I'm going back and they have had, man, they just hadn't been many. Okay, Joe Hall 72 to 85, Eddie Sutton 85 to 89, weird time. Rick Pitino 89 to 97, Tubby Smith 97 to 07, Billy Gillespie 07 to 09, Cal 2009 to present. That's not a lot of coaches. There are not a lot of Kentucky coaching changes. Maybe here's what I was thinking, because I think your answer was a good one. I like the way you thought through it, but there's also the question of the field, right? All it takes is one guy to take the job. Now, you mentioned Jay Wright. I'm guessing Jay Wright is not getting back into coaching. He's a Philly guy. I think if Jay Wright wanted to coach, I suspect he'd still be at Villanova. But it just takes one guy. It could be. There's a lot of good basketball coaches out there who would take that job, I guess is what I'm getting at. We just don't know who they are.
yep. I mean, if you're a frustrated Kentucky fan, I'm not going to knock anybody for saying that they're tired of this and the standards should be higher, given the pay and given the talent. So, but I do think it's worth remembering that we can say this, but next year's class is it is an unprecedented sort of class. And so I think you do have to keep that in mind too, in that, but I guess that can be a double-edged sword, right? It's maybe they are really good next year, but then what if one of those classes don't come around for another, 5 years? Then are we in the same cycle for the next 4 years after that? Or I don't know. Like it's not an easy spot for anybody. And like I said, though, I think the one thing I would stress is I don't think anyone should be upset with Kentucky fans for questioning why there's not more out of this team and or program in recent years. So,
yeah. I think I could respect both sides of this. I could certainly respect Kentucky fans for wanting a change. I could also understand the why not if you don't, for all the reasons you mentioned.
All right. Well, we've pissed off everybody outside of Arkansas and Kentucky. So let's
right.
let's talk about some other games real quickly. That way we don't. This was a big game with like we said, significant developments on each side. So I think it was worth the discussion.
Well, I mean, they're probably the two most high-profile basketball programs in the league
Don't say that, Chris. Don't go that route. Just,
historically.
no, look, it's Kentucky Arkansas games are always fun because it kind of brings back the nostalgia too. So
Yes. Okay, Texas A&M sits alone in second place as we do this on Wednesday morning, although I suspect they'll be joined by Tennessee by this time tomorrow. Boy, Auburn just looked like a frustrated team. I watched some of that on my
I
phone.
wonder why.
Yeah.
I wonder why Auburn was frustrated.
That game was chippy. Yeah, I was watching the first half of this one at my son's tournament game. So I'm watching during timeouts without the benefit of the audio, and then of course I watched the second half at home. Man, where do we start with this one?
I think it's a very easy place to start in this one.
Yeah.
Texas A&M goes 31 of 39 from the free throw line. Auburn goes 9 of 14.
I thought Bruce Pearl was going to have a heart attack last night.
I mean, well, I will say this. I mean, what's this? I bring the stat up all the time when we preview A&M games, but the stat hasn't changed all that much. So if you're shocked that A&M got to the free throw line that much, I wouldn't be. In that it was not a one-off thing. They're still number 4 in the country in free throw attempts per game. So, I mean, that's what they do. Like A&M gets to the free throw line, and that's part of their success. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not shocked by it because I think we kind of said this was going to be a free throw game. Auburn had 27 fouls. A&M got the free throw line 39 times. 31 points from the free throw line. I mean, that's significant. So I'm not saying, sure, I'm not going to go back and dissect every foul call, but I mean, that's a significant difference in terms of just like, if you're looking at it from Auburn's standpoint. And again, that's why you said, well, they're frustrated. I think, yeah, that's clearly why, because I'm sure there's some of those that they would question in terms of, that many attempts. So, yeah, but I mean, I thought Auburn actually they were in a good position, right? They're up double figures in the first half. Great start. But A&M just kind of, made that run. You had some big plays down the stretch, and Auburn just couldn't make a couple shots there late. A&M just made some more plays, got a couple steals, and yeah, that was kind of, I guess, the story of the game there. Again, beyond just the obvious statistical stuff, but I mean, it's another win for A&M, and I said yesterday in the power rankings, I said, look, I think we have to realize they're not going anywhere. They're 9-2 in the league now. It's time to accept. And I've already seen a lot of stuff, elsewhere about A&M this and overrated. I mean, they're 9-2 in the league.
Winning.
What do we say? I mean, how can we possibly look at this and without any other thing to say, yes, if you want to look at this one game, again, I understand the frustrations from Auburn's perspective, but as a whole, they are still getting knocked for their non-conference schedule. And that's all we can do, though. Like, it's like, well, you can say A&M has to be held out of the tournament or something. Like, as of right now, they shouldn't be in. Well, okay, but like they continue to win games. And so at some point, I think you have to understand that they're 9-2 in the league. If they finish 12-6, like they're in the NCAA tournament, whether you want them to be or not. Like they're going to be in. And so I think, again, I know it's going to be hard for fans, especially on the Auburn side, to remove that just in the reaction to this one game. But if you're looking at where A&M is as a whole right now, I mean, they're 9-2 in the SEC with 2 road losses at Kentucky and Arkansas. What else can you really ask for at this point? So,
anything else on this one?
Well, I mean, I think, it's a good game. I don't want to take that away just because of and I know, again, people are like, well, you just spent 35 minutes talking about Kentucky, Arkansas. We're spending 4 on Auburn and Texas A&M. So I think it's look, Wendell Green continues to kind of be the driving force for what Auburn can do offensively, but Alan Flanagan, you know, keeps the streak alive. Was it now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? I think it was like 11 or 12 straight games now at least 8 points. He hit a three early that kind of gave him a boost. The guys who played well for Auburn are kind of the guys you expected to play well for Auburn. And I still think it was just we talked about the schedule, right? Having to play A&M twice, West Virginia and Tennessee, all in the span of these last 5 games. It takes a toll, especially when you have a game that played out the way the one did last night, where you have a physical type game, very chippy. You know, yeah, certainly a couple plays here or there can change that game, but it's just man, it can take a toll on you. And then it's like, well, what's your reward now for Auburn? Well, you get to come back now and play Alabama at home. So it's been a tough stretch for the Tigers. But we said with Auburn too, they're by no means a lock for the NCAA tournament at this point. And so they've got some significant opportunities coming up, which obviously beating Alabama, that'd be fine if they do that. But the good news for Auburn moving forward is that they don't really have a lot of bad loss opportunities. Now, the problem, of course, they do have to play Alabama twice. They got to play Tennessee. They have to go to Rupp. They got Missouri. So I don't know. I mean, it's been a tough stretch, and their schedule's not easy to finish. So you look at it from Auburn's standpoint. On the A&M side, look, Tyrese Radford didn't have his best game, but who stepped up? Julius Marble. I don't remember who I
It's
said
so
this to a
good in
long time
conference
ago.
play.
Yeah, but they're like, what's the one guy that's not getting enough attention in the league? And this was a couple weeks ago. I said, I think it's Julius Marble because if you really look at what he's achieved and the reason for A&M's turnaround, he's a big reason why.
Yeah.
Because, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar hook and all this, I mean, he's got a lot of stuff that's really giving them, a huge boost there. I mean, 20 points in 25 minutes. I thought he was really good. Wade Taylor hit some big shots, of course. But yeah, I mean, I think for them to win that game, Radford had the big game against Auburn the first time around. To do that, on a night where Henry Coleman didn't score, and so that was I think for A&M still to win that game, and I know what the argument's going to be for that, but still to find a way to win that game like that's another significant, I think, part of the equation here.
Missouri caught South Carolina where you don't want to catch South Carolina, which is playing in your building. Carolina plays better on the road for whatever reason, and Carolina made a game of it for a while last night. Isaiah Mosley doesn't play for Missouri for unspecified reasons. That weird storyline continues. Missouri did discover its three-point shooting again, going 12 of 25. Gigi Jackson was really good for Carolina last night. Missouri checked the box it needed to check here.
Yeah, I mean,
Not
it's
loss avoidance.
Right. That's all that matters. So, yeah, I mean, thinking back, you kind of probably expected this. It's just a tough. Again, South Carolina has nothing to lose, and we said, I mean, what's the thing we keep saying with South Carolina? They've not quit. They're not going to quit. And you mentioned they play better on the road, actually, and it's one of those games. The longer you let South Carolina hang around, I'm watching this, and I'm like, like, when you let this kind of team hang around, it may get, interesting, but eventually Missouri pulls away at the end as they had to. And I think it's worth noting here. We haven't really brought this up a lot, but we'll talk about the Mosley thing in a second. But like, I think Missouri without Trey Gomillion too, like that's kind of a
Yeah.
And look, he's not a top scorer, that kind of stuff. But like, I think he gives them something that. But I mean, look, they're 4-1 without him, and I don't want to act like that's just. But I think he does give them some things on the floor that I think can be significant, like in a tournament type run. So I think eventually getting him back will be a nice thing for them, even if it's even if it's just 15 minutes, right? But I think that's something that you will look at when he returns. Quickly on the Mosley situation, because boy, I see some people on Twitter using all caps, and boy, everybody gets excited when we start seeing the all caps responses to what they're doing here. But I have no idea. Does anyone else have any idea outside of Dennis Gates or Isaiah Mosley? I don't. The coaching staff probably. Like I
Look,
don't know.
Blake,
Like
you and I have covered enough
it's a weird situation, but
sports
like
in our
we
life.
don't know.
When a guy's when a coach is not speaking about something like that, he's not being a jerk. He's probably protecting someone's privacy or a situation. And I'm not saying criticism is unwarranted for players or coaches. That's not what I'm saying at all. But use your brain in this one a little bit. If something is a weird situation, we live in a time where there's a lot of weird stuff going on. Is that a fair way to say it? Kids are dealing with more than they've ever dealt with. I think it's probably tougher to be a college student right now than it's ever been at any point in my lifetime. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I mean, I I think in this instance it's one of those where like which again, I understand. Like he was the top scorer, expected to be the best player on the team heading into the season, and there's been some just strange developments where he doesn't play and you don't really get a reason why. And because here's what happens, right? If you beg for the answer, well then if it's something significant and you tell everybody what it is, well, you should have kept that between you guys. Why is that getting
Yes.
out of the locker room? Right? Like that's what happens here. You can't win either way. Um, so I respect it, and everyone's gonna say, well, it's because you're the Dennis Gates guy. Well, yes, I mean, come on, please. But let's also be honest here in that I don't know what's going on. I trust that a guy who just got paid is getting paid millions of dollars to coach at a Division One program in the SEC probably is approaching this the way he thinks he should approach this.
Yeah.
And who am I to
You
question
protect your player.
why that is? Because what and we're not saying this, but like, what if it is something significant? Where like it's just like, all right, I'm going to come out and tell you guys what's going on, and then all of a sudden, all right, you've either betrayed the trust of your player or betrayed the trust of something else, right? Like I don't know, like I get it's frustrating for Missouri fans because when he's on the floor, we've said it, the law firm comes out, and you know, but it's just one of those things where I think that I don't know how to respond when these things these things happen this season with him and he's not played, and the one last night was surprising because it kind of came out of nowhere, right? Um so I don't know, but what I do know is Missouri just won their 14th home game of the season. That's their most in I don't remember how many years it was. They're 18-6. They got to win. They had to win because it wasn't it wasn't a loss. Now is where things start to shape up for Missouri because the next four games arguably will define their postseason here. Because they're at Tennessee, they're at Auburn, home against A&M, home against Mississippi State. Like this is kind of your season here in these four games, assuming that you don't lose to Georgia, LSU, or Ole Miss to finish the season. But these next four games are huge for the Tigers.
Okay, Ole Miss goes to Athens, beats Georgia, snaps what, a 10-game losing streak? I'll look this up.
No,
It was no, that's
they
right. They
beat
beat
South
South
Carolina.
Carolina in the middle of that. Okay, well, they'd lost, I think, 10 of 11. We talked about how Georgia had been reeling. I believe Georgia played. Yeah, I just want to double check. Without Roberts last night, it did. I watched a little bit of this one at the end. Let's focus on Ole Miss for a minute. Jamin Brakefield, who had a double-double in our backyard in Nashville against Vandy in a loss Saturday, was good again last night. Gets 24 points and what was it? 7 boards, 4 assists, 1 turnover. Miles Burns, I don't know that we mentioned Miles Burns on the podcast all year. Burns was an NAIA All-American who got 20 for them last night. And we ran some stats yesterday in a tweet about per 70 possessions. Miles Burns showed up on a couple of top 10 lists. He's been very good for them while he's been on the floor. Hats off to Kermit Davis and Ole Miss for going and getting a road win at a Georgia team that's really struggling.
Yeah, it's not a good loss for Georgia because the theme early in conference play is they were taking care of their business at home after beating Auburn and Mississippi State. But since then, they've lost to Vanderbilt at home. They've beaten South Carolina in overtime at home and lost to Ole Miss at home. So not great there for the Georgia Bulldogs. and now you get Kentucky on Saturday. So, yeah, I mean, for Ole Miss, like we keep saying with some of these teams, they could just as easily throw in the towel and just kind of be done. But when you really think about it, Ole Miss has not played that bad outside of a couple games. I mean, really, 4-point loss to Tennessee, lost by 10 at Mississippi State, 9-point home loss to Auburn, 4-point home loss to Georgia, lost by 12 at Arkansas, made a rally late in that one. Lost by 9 at home to Kentucky, lost by 3 on the road at Vanderbilt. They just haven't had enough to get over, the hump in those kind of games down the stretch. But they haven't been just downright bad. And I think and remember too, injuries have played a role. And so, yeah, nice for them to go on the road and get a win against Georgia because they needed something at this point. And like I said, I mean, now you got a chance to build a winning streak because they get South Carolina at home next. And so, yeah, I mean, clearly I think Ole Miss is still going to wind up in the bottom 4 here, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. They could not. They could possibly get out of there because Georgia's struggling. I mean, Vanderbilt, you just never know now, I think. So, and Ole Miss has got a few games, I think, that are winnable. South Carolina, LSU. So it's possible. Again, unlikely, but it's possible because again, they've been in a lot of games. They just have not been able to put it all together to pick up enough wins. So
Georgia hosting Kentucky is suddenly very interesting. And I guess hopefully they get Roberts back. He's got a concussion. That would make a big difference.
well, unless he takes too many shots.
Oh, I knew you were going to throw that in. I'm not saying he's not a good player. I'm just saying when you've got Cario Quindo, I don't sometimes understand why Roberts is taking 20 shots and Quindo's barely got to roll some games.
Well,
but I guess that's just me.
I don't know. You're not the only one probably, but no, I mean, to beat Kentucky, I think that's going to be necessary. But boy, you talk about a Kentucky loss in Athens, what that would do. Yikes.
Ooh.
We'll see.
Parting thoughts.
Well, again, I know some people are not going to be happy that we spent more than half of this video talking about Kentucky, Arkansas, but at the same time, it was the most significant outcome for a lot of different reasons, as we discussed. But if you want us talking about, hear us talk about other teams, well, you've got about 5,274 videos in the archives that you can hear us talk about every team in the SEC in some way, shape, or form, both basketball wise, football wise. We got baseball previews coming up all over the place. So yeah, be sure to check all that out. And again, we appreciate the support from you guys. And yeah, be sure to hit that subscribe button.
He's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.